has decided to use doctors trained in Ayurveda colleges as surgeons, so Ayurvedic surgeons, in the public healthcare system. Now, this is a controversial decision, and it has been widely opposed by allopathic doctors. The allopaths say these surgeons will bring down standards and they will promote quackery. To find out more about this, we spoke to Darshan Shankar. Darshan Shankar has spent a lifetime building bridges between traditional medicine and Western medicine. He runs a widely acknowledged Ayurveda hospital in Bangalore. He has set up the Transdisciplinary University. And much before this, he founded the Foundation for Revitalization of Local Health Traditions. Darshan Shankar takes a cautious view of it. He says, surgery does belong in Ayurveda, and the first surgeries in the world were done in India. But the question today is, are Ayurvedic surgeons truly good enough? Darshan, welcome to Speaking to Civil Society. You and I have been talking. Great to have you. You and I have been talking since 1997. I was thinking back this morning, and that's 23 long years. But today, first time on Zoom and COVID and all that, what we're going to talk about is what we witnessed yesterday, a one-day strike by allopathic physicians and surgeons protesting against the government's decision to use Ayurveda physicians trained as surgeons to do surgeries as a part of the public healthcare system. Now, where is all this coming from? India is the home of the first documented surgeries. Suruta, his own manuscripts are the foundations of Ayurveda. And yet there seems to be an enormous gulf between the traditional systems and the allopathic Western system as is being practiced here. Now, you've been a guy who's looked at all this for years and years. You run a transdisciplinary university. What's your take on this?
No, firstly, it is true what you say, that Ayurveda is the knowledge system that has gifted surgery to the world. If you see the Burrow Wellcome Library in London, it's a library on the history of medicine. We can see a manuscript in palm leaf form of the Shishrut Samhita, which is an entire treatise on surgery. Even as late as the 18th century, plastic surgery, there are British archival records to this effect, plastic surgery was exported, the techniques of plastic surgery were exported from India to Britain.
I don't think modern Western surgery actually predates the 18th century. It's roughly the 18th century when modern Western surgery actually takes some form. Right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, because those were the days, plastic surgery going from here, went at that time in a timely way. Mm. So historically, of course, I think that there is a global debt, not just a debt of Indian surgeons, but the world of surgery owes a debt to Ayurveda. Mm. And I would say that, there is an upkar today on the surgical world to really revitalize surgery in Ayurveda. Mm-hmm. Now, that is historical background. Let's come to the contemporary scene. I think perhaps 2 decades ago, the medical councils of Ayurveda instituted a master's program in surgery. Post a bachelor's degree, the bachelor's degree in Ayurveda. The bachelor's degree in Ayurveda is called BAMS, Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, just like MBBS is medicine and surgery at the undergraduate level. And I think both the graduates in Ayurveda or allopathy at the undergraduate level only learn minor surgery.
What is minor surgery?
So, minor surgeries are, cuts, wounds, sutures, things like that. They don't enter into operation theaters. They only enter into what they call minor OTs, minor operation theaters or whatever. They're not really operation theaters. Now, so at the postgraduate level, an MBBS or a BMS start at the same point, that they really don't have a background in surgical practice. It is the 3 years of the master's degree that trains an allopath surgeon into general surgery or whatever he specializes in. And similarly, in the case of Ayurveda. Now, in the university, I have actually looked at the curriculum of both master's surgery of Ayurveda and the master's surgery program of allopathy. And we've compared the curriculums and we find that over 90% of the curriculum is the same. The same broad areas. What the Ayurvedic people have done is that they have used Sanskrit words for all the topics. In brackets, they have put the modern terminology, which is the same as the allopathic terminology. And certainly, I think they have borrowed that modern terminology in the bracket part. Borrowed meaning use that modern terminology against that Sanskrit terminology for Ayurvedic terms. But let me put it this way, that's a technical thing. In substance, the curriculum is the same. 90% is the same. The 10% that is different has elements of pre-surgical and post-surgical features which are there in Ayurveda and which are very interesting. And I think that if an objective look is taken of those pre and post-operative procedures, you may find that the surgery as such can benefit. I mean, modern medicine doesn't have those pre and post-operative procedures.
Okay.
They can benefit.
So to just to bring you back a
bit. The point I'm making, therefore, is curriculum is similar. However, the training is very different in the sense that the infrastructure for teaching surgery at the postgraduate level in Ayurvedic institutions, my own observation is that it is certainly much poorer than the infrastructure and the human resources that is there in allopathy. Therefore, even though they have the same curriculum and the same syllabus, probably the training imparted to an average modern surgeon is far superior than the training imparted to an Ayurvedic surgeon, for the simple reason that the infrastructure in the Ayurvedic postgraduate colleges for surgery is not of the standards of the modern surgical practice.
Okay. So can I just ask you here 2 questions? One, what is it that an Ayurvedic surgeon learns? 2, who teaches an Ayurvedic surgeon? And actually, let's add a 3rd question to that. Have Ayurvedic surgeons been practicing surgery in the last 2 decades?
So theoretically, both the Ayurvedic and the modern surgeon learn the same curriculum. They learn theoretically the same curriculum. But in practicals, the Ayurvedic surgeon does not get the opportunity to practice during the course of his training surgery with the same exposure that a modern surgeon gets in training during his master's degree. And what we find on the ground, it varies from state to state, but what we find on the ground is that generally surgeons trained in Maharashtra has that situation where the state government passed a gazette notification similar to the recent gazette notification that the central government passed or the Central Medical Council passed long ago, maybe 15 years ago, saying that Ayurvedic surgeons can practice to the extent of their training. Now, the training, of course, is decided by the curriculum. Now, what Maharashtra did is that several colleges in Maharashtra improved their infrastructure And so you have surgeons, Ayurvedic surgeons coming out of Maharashtra
Better
who
trained.
do considerably more, do surgery almost on par with that of modern surgeons from those kinds of colleges which have that infrastructure. I have a friend, for example, who's a master's in surgery, Ayurveda, who practices in Raigad, Ratnagiri district. And the government has appointed him because there is such a huge shortage of surgeons in India that they have appointed him as the district surgeon. Now, people from all over the district come and he does a fantastic job.
What kind of what kind of surgeries does he do?
He does all the general surgeries. The general surgeries, what is called general surgery, you know,
An appendix, hernia, appendix, that kind.
hernia, you know, but they are all general. What is called even in allopathy as general surgery.
Okay.
A general surgeon is different
removing
from
a gallbladder, removing a gallbladder, that kind of thing.
Yeah, laparoscopy. You know.
Now, is this the case? Is this the case with the majority of this person happens to be someone who you know? But if I would ask you to take a broad sweep, is this the case with all the people who come out with degrees as surgeons from the Ayurvedic colleges?
No, I don't think so. I think that theoretically they know the whole range of surgical, the whole range of surgical practice, theoretically. But in practice, what you find today in the world of Ayurveda surgery is that most Ayurveda surgeons restrict their surgeries to the anorectal region.
Yeah.
Even the allopaths who know, if there is an anorectal problem, they'll say, go to an Ayurvedic place for that. But this is a very ridiculous situation that you are theoretically teaching them the entire surgical curriculum that any surgeon learns. But in spite of the huge shortage of surgeons, you have not trained them adequately. So coming to the current situation, I do understand the problem that IMA may be having about asking Ayurvedic surgeons to be practicing surgery on, or to be given opportunity to practice surgery in hospitals in the same way as the modern surgeon on day one. Because on day one, even though the curriculum should permit them to do that, the practice and the training does not.
Okay. Well, so what do you think should? Okay. So you feel these fears are not unfounded, and these concerns are not unfounded.
They are not unfounded. They are not unfounded for day one. I mean, for day one, to expect a fresh graduate of surgery. Yes.
So that's fine. But say, going beyond day one. Do you feel it's a good idea I think it's an excellent idea. It's a very important idea. It's very important for public health system in India. It's an extremely important idea. We are so short of surgeons, hugely shortage of surgeons, that they should welcome this move. But what they should do is be constructive and say, look, can we work along with Ayurvedic postgraduate surgical centers and strengthen their infrastructure, strengthen their training? After all, 500 surgeons coming out annually would be an asset to the world of surgery. We need thousands, not 500. We need in 100,000 surgeons. That's the kind of shortage we have. So they should welcome this move. But what is happening is, and that is my concern, frankly, what is happening is that there is a very peculiar, narrow politics of medicine at play. So I think that a constructive way of looking at this is for modern surgical establishments, teaching establishments to join hands with the Ayurvedic colleges and strengthen them. We need these surgeons. The country needs these surgeons hugely. It's huge shortage. We need these surgeons. Why should we? And it is so humiliating, frankly. Because, in my hospital, I have 3 surgeons
who work in our hospital. Now, I find it absurd that they have spent 3 years learning surgery and they cannot practice surgery, even general surgery, with a level playing field. Every time we have to do a surgery, we have good infrastructure in our place. I have to invite modern surgeons to participate as well. And I do so willingly because I want my surgeons to build capacity. But I find it humiliating that 3 years have been wasted. Why did they? Either you stop the program of postgraduate surgery in Ayurveda, which is not a good idea because, as I said, Ayurveda deserves to participate in surgery. We gifted surgery to the world, and therefore there is an obligation to strengthen surgery.
Yeah,
there certainly is, but we should do it constructively as Indians, not look at ourselves as this pathy or that pathy. The whole world of surgery should come forward, strengthen Ayurvedic surgery, and create a level playing field. So it's a very good idea. But on day one, I would not advise that Ayurvedic surgeons should be allowed to practice fresh graduates in the same manner until they undergo training.
Okay. So, some of this conflict which has emerged comes out of a sense of feeling among ordinary people as well as now, allopathic practitioners that what happens in Ayurveda is not science. Now, you've spent a lot of time trying to build the bridges between, Ayurveda as a science and Western science, and try to create connections between the two and better understanding. What do you think needs to be done?
No, I think that there needs to be introductory courses introduced in all streams of medicine, particularly allopathy, about the understanding of the way in which Ayurveda looks at biological change in the body. It is certainly ignorance to say that Ayurveda is not a science in a generic sense. It is not certainly the Ayurveda knowledge system is not the same as the modern knowledge system. It's not a molecular understanding of biological change. It's a systemic understanding of biological change. Now, even in the frontiers of biology, we know that while we have incredible insights of changes happening at the cellular level, we don't know what is happening at the systemic level. And so that's the weakness of not just modern medicine, but of modern biology. It does not know what is happening at the systemic level. Now, here is India with a heritage which understands change happening at a systemic level. And therefore, the combination of really molecular approaches and systemic approaches is very, very important to understand biological change. Because you cannot understand biological change only at molecular levels or at cellular levels. I mean, there is a gap, huge gap. I mean, how a cell behaves is not how a tissue behaves, how an organ behaves, or how the whole system behaves. You cannot extrapolate.
So I mean, we are right in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and I think this is exactly the kind of problem that a lot of that the entire medical fraternity is trying to address. We don't know how COVID affects the whole system of a person.
That's right. I mean, I was in Norway a few years ago and talking to the head of their government medical system. And they are far more open-minded there. I mean, what he said is, look, let's face it, all that allopathy is really good at is managing acute conditions, emergencies, surgery. We are no good at understanding systemic imbalances. We don't understand wellness, at all. We have limited interventions in prevention by way of vaccines and so on and so forth. But those vaccines are very specific. They are not general. We are looking for general immunity, which is systemic immunity. You have to make the system resilient, not against a particular virus or a particular bacteria, but make the entire system stronger. Now, that modern medicine doesn't have. So he said that really the future of health sciences ought to be integrative. It should combine systemic and COVID is absolutely post-COVID is precisely the situation.
Yeah.
Because
so you have post-COVID.
conditions-
Yeah, you have post-COVID clinics today, but they are all depending on a system of medicine which, in a sense, does not know how to deal with the post-COVID syndromes.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in COVID or in any situation, acute conditions, emergencies, that is allopathy's forte. Systemic conditions, which you cannot attribute to a single cause. I mean, at the frontiers of medicine, we know that every single condition is multifactorial. There is no single target. There are multiple targets, and the solutions is not a single molecule. Single molecules don't work. Single molecule is excellent for an acute condition. If you want to relieve pain, you want one molecule, which is analog of actually a plant, cannabis plant. You take out morphine or its analogs, but that's fine for an acute condition. And you can use it for short durations, because they are very, very powerful, these single molecules. So really post-COVID, we are seeing symptoms, what they are calling long COVID, which are systemic disorders. Systemic orders, the allopathy doesn't have the capability to analyze them or to deal with them, because it only can deal.
Now, your hospital in Bangalore has, has worked with innumerable cases which have to do with the nervous system, nervous disorders, tumors, a whole lot of things. How do you feel? And forget surgeons for the time being. Forget about surgery coming into public healthcare. But how do you think Ayurveda can be integrated into public healthcare more meaningfully?
I think if you look at the ground reality of Ayurveda, you are finding that today probably the turnover of the entire Ayurveda sector may be of the order of something like 70,000 crores per annum. This would be the turnover of clinics and hospitals. This would be the turnover of industry. I'm talking of private industry. Government is much smaller. Just like in allopathy, I mean, the allopathic system, government investment is 1.5 of the GDP, but the actual spend on Western medicine is about 4, 5, 6%. And so the rest of the spend is happening in the private sector. It's the same in Ayurveda. So it's about 70,000 crore per annum. That is the health services of Ayurveda. And they are not being pushed by government. This is just citizens going to private clinics, private hospitals, some of them not for profit.
This is what people are spending, right? Not what the government is
That's
spending.
the health-seeking behavior. That is the health-seeking behavior. Now, if you take our hospital, I mean, no one is paying anybody to come to our hospital. It is completely self-financing. People come for musculoskeletal disorders. They come with strokes. They come with Parkinson. They come with skin conditions. They come with gastrointestinal tract imbalances. They come with irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, why do they come? I mean, I don't take names, but some of the richest people in Bangalore who can go anywhere in the world, come to our place for treatment. I mean, they can go anywhere in the world. They're not coming because of me or because of the university. They are coming because they want relief.
Yeah.
I mean, so what we find is that on the ground, all over the country, you will find that so-called non-communicable diseases, what are called NCDs, are really being managed by the Ayurvedic sector. And no one is taking notice of this.
So what can be done to take this knowledge, this expertise into better delivery of public health care, in your opinion? 1, 2, and 3 things that you think need to be done.
I think what needs to be done is really to visualize reimagining of healthcare in India at primary, secondary, tertiary levels, and even before the primary level. I'll come to that. We have to reimagine healthcare. We have to implement our national health policy, which is talking of an integrative framework. It is not only national health policy, it's a global health policy. I mean, in America, the National Institutes of Health are year after year spending increasing money on what they call complementary medicine, CAM. Increasing amounts of budget. The budgets on complementary medicine are higher than the budgets that we spend on the entire so-called Ayush sector, the US spends. Scandinavian countries have created research institutes for complementary medicine all over the world. So really the future of healthcare, when you look at citizens' behavior, health-seeking behavior, the citizens are exercising pluralistic choices. No citizen goes to any one single system of medicine for everything. This is 40 to 70% of global citizens. These are studies on this. Now, when you see this behavior, the health system has to respond. You have to create a health system that is integrated. Now, we have actually done this in policy. In 2005, the National Rural Health Mission, now called the National Health Mission, has actually got an integrative framework, but they're not executing it. That's their policy. But execution still happens in silos. So unless we break these silos and we create centers of integrative healthcare in both government sector and private sector, where citizens have a cafeteria kind of a choice, and there is more bonhomie, not this stupid politics of medicine that the IMA is standing for. I'm very, very critical of IMA. They are not trying to defend public interest. They are trying to defend their narrow professional interests. And there also there is really no risk, because the requirement is so huge.
So huge. Yeah, no, but there are concerns, professional concerns, which you can't dismiss. You have enough quackery in surgery happening even today, right? You have someone removing kidneys, you've got someone removing uteruses, you've got all kinds of things. Now, if you legitimize a wider use of surgery without the proper regulation or the proper training, there is reason to be concerned, right?
I completely concede that. That is why I'm saying that while Ayurvedic surgeons should be empowered, strengthened, but not on day one. On day one, they should limit their practice to what they are actually got trained, practical training in. But on day two, and that day two is not 10 years away, that day two can begin to happen from now, because the curriculum is the same. Just strengthen infrastructure, strengthen human resources, let there be cross-fertilization. In 3 years, Bangladesh has shown, Zafrullah has shown that he has trained paramedics to perform, family planning operations.
Yeah.
Very, very well. Zero cases of mishap. Why would Ayurvedic surgeons not perform? It's a matter of skill. There is no.
So you say what we need to do is better utilize our human resource, which is available. So if I were to sum this up, I would sum up what you're saying is train better, spend more, and create deeper understanding between Ayurveda and the traditional medical streams, and the allopathic stream. Is that what you would say?
Yes, that's the need of the hour, because no single system has the best solutions for all our problems. For acute conditions, for emergencies, I would not go to Ayurveda. I would go to allopathy.
Yeah. And we already have the we already have the advantage of a policy in place to do this. It's a question of now actually rolling up our sleeves and doing it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We have the policy, National Health Policy 2017, saying this precisely. But we need to do it. I mean, recently now, I was yesterday part of a Lancet Commission webinar, where the Lancet Commission is looking at reimagining health care in India. I was disappointed to see that the attention that they are paying to non-Western medical systems is very, very marginal. This way, we will not be able to create. And I wanted to mention that there is also a fourth tier. It is not only primary, secondary, tertiary where we need to integrate. But in India, we should be advancing a fourth tier, which is empowering citizens, health in the hands of citizens. The whole lot of home remedies that we can give people, to prevent things, to improve their wellness. We have 6,500 species of medicinal plants growing in all kinds of environments.
Take them into homes.
They are in homes, but we are not strengthening that. They are in homes. From in Bangalore city, the university must have distributed lakhs of species for home gardens, medicinal home gardens, and people have taken them. So we need to do that. You can cure a simple non-specific fever, cough, cold, red discharge, white discharge. Your civil society magazine carries a page on home remedies. I'm sure it is benefiting all its readers.
Sure.
That's the fourth tier. We need to strengthen. Yes, we need to strengthen homes. We need to strengthen communities. We don't need to depend on institutions for everything. If you do this, then universal health coverage is closer to reach. An integrative approach, strengthening communities and homes, not only institutions. So this is the strategy.
Okay, Darshan, thanks a lot for this. And we'll have you back in further episodes because this is not going anywhere. We can see the public health issue today actually getting the attention it deserves, even if there are conflict zones, but at least getting the attention it deserves thanks to our wretched virus, which will hopefully go away and leave us wiser. But thank you very much and see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.